fear is not real. The only place that fear can exist is in our thoughts of the future. It is a product of our imagination. Do not misunderstand me. Danger is very real, but fear is a choice.
Greetings world. We are AnonDK. Today we will take a look at quantum computers and the rapidly growing world of artificial intelligence. It is important to note that while quantum computers enable much to happen in the future, it is still at the starting level and are pretty worthless at this exact moment. However, as we know how the elite work and think, we can keep a watchful eye on the developments of technology and be prepared for how it will be used by them. We know economies are collapsing across the world. The only thing standing between you having the things you do and having nothing at all is the government's announcement of the collapse. The illusion of economy has been kept up by the elite until the time is right for them to take the next step. It is the quiet before the storm. Once the collapse of economies is finally announced and the effects are allowed to take place, singularity will be achieved. What is singularity? It is what the elite have prepared us for in movies like Terminator, Artificial Intelligence, RoboCop, Eagle Eye, where the woman's voice is actually the AI computer system which runs the NSA spy grid in real life today. Singularity is when technology surpasses humans, which is inevitable and will happen far quicker than estimation state. Artificial intelligence will trigger runaway technological growth, resulting in unfathomable changes to human civilization. Once surpassed, humanity will be damned and destroyed. First, jobs will be lost in massive amounts, which will naturally lead to society dependent on government. Unemployment has been on a steady decline for quite some time now. Many large corporations have closed stores, leaving thousands without jobs. Microsoft is already cutting workforce and jobs to move towards cloud tech, which is code for artificial intelligence, robots, automated systems. Ride-sharing service Uber is already well in place, and companies like Amazon's logistics branch is banking on AI being the next frontier in technological innovation, investing heavily in the industry. China, Korea and Japan collectively account for nearly half the shipments of articulated robots in the world. Investment in AI is set to drive venture capital investment in China in 2017. Tak Lo, of Hong Kong's Zeroth, notes there are more mentions of AI in Chinese research papers than there are in the US, leaving us to deduce that most of the world will be dependent on Asia to bring about order after the chaos, as we have proven to you before. In the UK, a report says roughly 250,000 public servants could lose their jobs to robots over the next 15 years. That is of course wrong. It will be many more unemployed and much sooner than they say. Meanwhile, other governments such as those in Hong Kong and Singapore are increasingly turning to AI to take over various administrative functions. Google's digital journalism initiative is spearheading an AI software called Juice, which is a propaganda speech censorship program disguised as helping reporters write more accurate and engaging pieces. Accurate according to who? According to the elite's agenda. No freedom of thought. No freedom of speech. No freedom of choice. No humanity. They do nothing for you. They will always disguise the control. Technology will be used to save us by taking over our lives. All transportation will turn to self-driving. No one will be able to afford cars. For example, cars will drive themselves, creating less jobs for the people without them. Banking will be digital like currency. Technology will do the jobs, not people. This will be sold as robots saving lives rather than a police officer being replaced by AI that cannot assess a situation or understand complex human interactions. Pick any profession and you can work it out on your own. Be aware of the deception. It will always be advertised as something you'll want. Something that sounds good. This unemployment will lead to the humans being further brainwashed into believing they are useless eaters. But by keeping the masses brainwashed into believing technology is advanced, that advance is what we should be striving for. That with technology we are advanced. We are as gods. This will lead naturally to the one world religion. The worship of artificial intelligence, already being practiced by most of the world, disguised as the worship of self. Facebook has already announced it is a religion. Artificial intelligence will eventually strip us of humanity, physically and mentally. Mentally, this has already begun with the idea that our minds are simply quantum computers. We ourselves are nothing more than machines, empty and meaningless with no purpose for being, void of empathy, conscience and free will. When we are more machine than man, there will be no room for compassion or free thought. There will be no room for humanity. If you are not in this digital new world order system when it has been rolled out, you will be outcast, jailed, and killed. So let us look into the so-called new technology that is beginning this process today. Quantum computing. Again, this is still in need of improvement and upgrades in order to be effective. However, it is a vital piece to the artificial intelligence agenda. Once perfected, it will be too late to keep an eye on or learn about. As all things the elite control, the symbolism you will find here is staggering, as are the keywords and terminology. If you use big words you sound smart, so you must be smart when you use these confusing words. Right. Quantum computers communicate through their own AI language, which funny enough uses parts of the Enochian language the fallen angels use. It is self-learning and teach other machines as these computers write their own code, in their own language. The chipsets containing thousands of qubits are arranged as were the letters of the Enochian alphabet on the Great Tablet. A qubit is the measurement system used in the days of the fallen angels, when they were here on Earth. The qubits of the D-wave are in 600-cell tetrahedrons. A tetrahedron is a pyramid structure. We will not get into too much technical detail on the significance of all of this, but the 600 is actually comprised of the tree of life. We see this used in Kabbalah and, as we have pointed out before, many other things. We hope you can see the black cube symbolism for yourself on this one and remember the meanings of it. Worship of Lucifer. Quantum computing will allow for the reconstruction of the Tower of Babel. When the elite ruled Babylon under the Luciferian king Nimrod, they built a tower, a portal, because their goal was to climb back to heaven and kill God because they thought of themselves as gods and were under the one world order. When CERN opened the portal for a nanosecond earlier this year, they claimed they must open it again in order to kill God. The plans do not change. It is all the same now as it was 4,000 years ago. Still no one is paying attention. You do not have to believe this. The elite do, and their beliefs and actions based on them rule your life. So know this. They must advance quantum computing before it will serve its true purpose. But it will advance. Much of the symbolism has been exposed by Richie from Boston and Face Like the Sun YouTube channels. We suggest subscribing and catching up on their past videos. Our current computers encode information as bits, limited as ones and zeros. So the quantum computers encode information as quantum bits, or qubits. These can be both 1 and 0 at the same time, making the quantum computers can be used to search, organize, control, censor large databases in a fraction of the time that it would take a conventional computer. Quantum computers are the secret key to unlocking all encrypted files. Privacy is now an illusion of the past. Other applications could include using quantum computers to study quantum mechanics. and to design other quantum computers. Because a quantum computer can contain multiple states at the same time, it has the potential to be millions of times more powerful than today's most powerful supercomputers. Like the first digital computers, quantum computing offers the possibility of technology millions of times more powerful than current systems. But the key to its success will be translating real-world problems into quantum Enochian language. According to physicist David Deutsch, a quantum computer works on 1 million computations at the same time, while your desktop PC works on one at a time in order. This is a big advantage for data mining companies like Google, Facebook, NSA, CIA, and physicists, scientists. CERN. When the world's first digital computer was completed in 1946, it opened up vast new worlds of possibility. Still, classical computers were only used for limited applications because they could only be programmed in machine code. It took so long to set up problems that they were only practical for massive calculations. Now look at us. D-Wave. Quantum computing technology has been growing exponentially. It started doubling every 6 months and now doubles every 3. The only limit is computer hardware. AI will inevitably be smarter than humans. That does not mean better, by any means. Smart and intelligence are keywords. Google, who now has D-Wave, now has the technology to psychologically profile and predict the behavior of human consumers under the deception that it is for high-value ads to be delivered to you. Google can funnel site profile metadata on Internet users to the NSA and CIA via the PRISM program. This is old news, but people are only just waking up to it. The mentality most people have of computers and data in general is so behind the times, even talking about what has been exposed, proven as fact, decades ago is shocking and not believed. Nothing is free. If you use it for free, then you are the product. Simple marketing. It is not rocket science, just common sense. Director of Engineering at Google, Ray Kurzweil, during his conference speech at the Global Futures 2045 International Congress in New York, claimed that the biological parts of our body will be replaced with mechanical parts, and this could happen as early as 2100. We all know the dates they give us are meaningless, and technology advances in leaps and bounds. What they say will take 20 years will take 7. Kurzweil's goal is to merge with machines in order to become immortal. You will find most physicists wish for and work towards this. So let us learn more.
The science delusion is the belief that science already understands the nature of reality in principle, leaving only the details to be filled in. This is a very widespread belief in our society. It's the kind of belief system of people who say, I don't believe in God, I believe in science. It's a belief system which has now been spread to the entire world. Since the late 19th century, science has been conducted under the aspect of a belief system or worldview, which is essentially that of materialism, philosophical materialism. And these sciences are now wholly owned subsidiaries of the materialist worldview. I think that as we break out of it, the sciences will be regenerated. But essentially the 10 dogmas which are the default worldview of most educated people all over the world are, first, that nature is mechanical or machine-like. The universe is like a machine, animals and plants are like machines, we're like machines. In fact, we are machines. We're lumbering robots, in Richard Dawkins' vivid phrase, with brains that are genetically programmed computers. Second, matter is unconscious. The whole universe is made up of unconscious matter. There's no consciousness in stars, in galaxies, in planets, in animals, in plants, and there ought not to be any in us either, if this theory is true. So a lot of the philosophy of mind over the last 100 years is trying to prove that we're not really conscious at all. So the matter's unconscious, then the laws of nature are fixed. This is dogma 3. The laws of nature are the same now as they were at the time of the Big Bang, and they'll be the same forever. Not just the laws, but the constants of nature are fixed, which is why they are called constants. Dogma 4, the total amount of matter and energy is always the same. It never changes in total quantity, except at the moment of the Big Bang, when it all sprang into existence from nowhere in a single instant. The 5th dogma is that nature is purposeless. There are no purposes in all nature, and the evolutionary process has no purpose or direction. Dogma 6, biological heredity is material. Everything you inherit is in your genes, or in epigenetic modifications of the genes, or in cytoplasmic inheritance. It's material. Dogma 7, memories are stored inside your brain as material traces. Somehow everything you remember is in your brain in modified nerve endings, phosphorylated proteins. No one knows how it works, but nevertheless, almost everyone in the scientific world believes it must be in the brain. Dogma 8, your mind is inside your head. All your consciousness is the activity of your brain and nothing more. Dogma 9, which follows from dogma 8, psychic phenomena like telepathy are impossible. Your thoughts and intentions cannot have any effect at a distance because your mind's inside your head. Therefore, all the apparent evidence for telepathy and other psychic phenomena is illusory. People believe these things happen, but it's just because they don't know enough about statistics, or they're deceived by coincidences, or it's wishful thinking. And dogma 10, mechanistic medicine is the only kind that really works. That's why governments only fund research into mechanistic medicine and ignore complementary and alternative therapies. Those can't possibly really work because they're not mechanistic. They may appear to work because people would have got better anyway, or because of the placebo effect. But the only kind that really works is mechanistic medicine. Well, this is the default worldview, which is held by almost all educated people all over the world. It's the basis of the educational system, the National Health Service, the Medical Research Council, governments, and it's just the default worldview of educated people. As my friend Terence McKenna used to say, modern science is based on the principle, give us one free miracle and we'll explain the rest.
For 80 years, all computers have worked basically the same way, a series of electrical circuits switching between off and on, 0 and 1. But that could be about to change. Quantum computing would enable exponential jumps in computing power, turning the entire industry on its head. And according to Microsoft's research lab, it could happen in the next 10 years. Where a conventional computer uses electrical circuits as bits, a quantum computer runs on quantum bits, or qubits. Tiny particles magnetically suspended in extreme cold, just fractions of a degree above absolute zero. The idea is to keep each qubit in a state of superposition, so it's simultaneously a 1 and a 0. That allows for something researchers call a quantum speedup. With the speedup, each qubit increases computing power exponentially. With enough qubits, that power starts to go really fast. It won't help much if you just want to check your email, but it lets researchers tackle complex problems like weather prediction or materials analysis that are still really difficult with conventional computing. Google and Microsoft are particularly interested. They've both formed quantum labs, hiring away a lot of the top scientists working on quantum computing. But that speedup isn't happening yet, or at least we haven't seen proof of it. A company called D-Wave is already making and selling quantum computers to different labs, including Google's Quantum AI lab. But a lot of researchers say the computers can't actually demonstrate a quantum speedup. That means it is a quantum computer, but it's not good at any of the things we want quantum computers to be good at. Of course, D-Wave disagrees, but it's really hard to say who's right. It's one of the weirdest things about quantum computing. It might already be here, and we just don't know it yet.
With researchers who are using the outermost electron in phosphorus as a qubit. But how does that work? Well, all electrons have magnetic fields, so they're basically like tiny bar magnets. And this property is called spin. If you place them in a magnetic field, they will align with that field, just like a compass needle lines up with the magnetic field of the Earth. Now this is the lowest energy state, so you could call it the zero state, or we call it, for the electron, spin down. Now you can put it in a 1 state or spin up, but that takes some energy.
If you took out the glass from your compass, you could turn the needle the other way, but you would have to apply some force to it. You have to push it to flip to the other side. And that is the highest energy state. In principle, if you were so delicate to really put it exactly against the magnetic field, it would stay there.
Now, so far, this is basically just like a classical bit. It's got two states, spin up and spin down, which are like the classical 1 and 0. But the funny thing about quantum objects is that they can be in both states at once. Now, when you measure the spin, it will be either up or down, but before you measure it, the electron can exist in what's called a quantum superposition, where these coefficients indicate the relative probability of finding the electron in one state or the other. Now, it's hard to imagine how this enables the incredible computing power of quantum computers without considering two interacting quantum bits. Hello. Hi. Now there are 4 possible states of these two electrons.
You could think that, well, that's just like 2 bits of a classical computer, right? If you have 2 bits, you can write 00, 01, 10, 11, right? There's 4 numbers. But these are still just 2 bits of information, right? All I need to say to determine which one of the 4 numbers you have in your computer code is the value of the first bit and the value of the second bit. Here instead, quantum mechanics allows me to make superposition of each one of these 4 states. So I can write a quantum mechanical state which is perfectly legitimate, that is some coefficient times this, plus some coefficient times that, plus some coefficient times that, plus some coefficient. So to determine the state of this 2-spin system, I need to give you 4 numbers, 4 coefficients. Whereas in the classical example of the 2 bits, I only need to give you 2 bits. So this is how you understand why 2 qubits actually contain 4 bits of information. I need to give you 4 numbers to tell you the state of this system. Whereas here I only need 2. Now if we made 3 spins, we would have 8 different states. I need to give you 8 different numbers to define the state of those 3 spins. Whereas classically it's just 3 bits. If you keep going, what you'll find is that the amount of equivalent classical information contained by n qubits is 2 to the power n classical bits. And of course, the power of exponentials tells you that once you have, let's say, 300 of those qubits in what we call the fully entangled state, so you must be able to create these really crazy states where there is a superposition of all 300s being one way and another way and another way and so on, then you have like 2 to the 300 classical bits, which is as many particles as there are in the universe.
But there's a catch. Although the qubits can exist in any combination of states, when they are measured, they must fall into one of the basis states, and all the other information about the state before the measurement is lost.
The reason why quantum computers are not a replacement for classical computers. No, they're not. They're not universally faster. They're only faster for special types of calculations where you can use the fact that you have all these quantum superpositions available to you at the same time to do some kind of computational parallelism. If you just want to watch a video in high definition or browse the internet or write some document in Word, they're not going to give you any particular improvement if you need to use a classical algorithm to get to the result. So you should not think of a quantum computer as something where every operation is faster. In fact, every operation is probably going to be slower than in the computer you have on the desk. But it's a computer where the number of operations required to arrive at the result is exponentially small. So the improvement is not in the speed of the individual operation, is in the total number of operations you need to arrive at the result. But that is only the case in particular types of calculations, in particular algorithms. It's not universally.
Quantum computing is a whole new category of computing, and it directly leverages the laws of quantum mechanics to do a computation. Quantum mechanics are the most fundamental laws in the universe. It describes how everything in the universe works. What we've built, we use those laws of quantum mechanics.
Quantum computers allow us to access hidden features of nature. We're looking at the dynamics of atoms and molecules, and they found that those atoms and molecules behave nothing like what you experience at macroscopic scales.
One of the fundamental building blocks, or the fundamental building block of a quantum computer, is a thing called a qubit, Q-U-B-I-T, right? So it's basically a bit, the lowest level building block of a computer today. It's either a 0 or a 1, but it can also be in what's called the superposition of 0 and 1. In other words, it could be in two states, 0 and 1 at the same time.
There's something called superposition. Say an electron is going from point A to B. Your common conception of how an object travels from one place to another is to take a single trajectory across space. Electrons actually take all possible paths simultaneously. Imagine that you're at point A and you have to go through a maze with 1 billion possible paths to escape. If you're a classical you, you're going to try one path, that didn't work, come back, and you could imagine it taking many, many lifetimes through 1 billion or never. But what if the same physical you could travel all those paths simultaneously? Another effect is quantum tunneling, wherein I can have an object on one side of an impenetrable barrier, and it will disappear and appear on the other side of that wall. If all of these different selves and these parallel streams of reality can talk to each other and collaborate, coherent evolution is when these paths can talk. You see a strip of film representing two realities, and when the two pieces of film are stuck together, we call that coherent evolution. They can talk to each other. That's another way that you could escape and explore domains that would otherwise be forbidden to you as a classical entity. And finally, quantum entanglement, which really bothered Albert Einstein. Example, imagine you had two pairs of dice, one in California, one in New York City. You roll them 1,000 times. But if you compare the die rolls 1,000 times out of 1,000 or 1,000,000 out of 1,000,000, they got the same result every time. It's as if the dice know about each other with no physical connection between them whatsoever. And that's how those disparate paths can talk to each other.
And superposition and entanglement is another quantum mechanical property.
When people started thinking about how to engineer systems based on this kind of quantum dynamics, there's something called qubits. So bits, what you're all used to, it's a 0 or 1, basically a switch that can be on or off. But what if I could build a device that could be in two possibilities simultaneously and then concatenate them into an array? To put it the way David Deutsch, the progenitor of this field, quantum computation will be the first technology that allows a useful task to be formed in collaboration between parallel universes. Why is it if the universe at this microscopic scale behaves that way, and you're built out of those constituents, you're not doing that?
In fact, it's quite difficult to do.
Okay, here we're finally going to hear from the CEO himself why D-Wave is very limited in what they are able to do. They need a very cold environment for their quantum computation to even work.
The processor is a quantum computer.
So they need these huge giant refrigerators that keep it cold enough for there to be quantum computational processes that can work. And the quantum computer is actually just that black part that you see. It's just the chip. That's the whole quantum computer, but it can't work without the giant refrigerator. And that is why D-Wave is limited in what they can do.
The overwhelmingly obvious killer app for quantum computation is optimization.
What our buddy there, Jordy Rose from D-Wave, means by optimization is making it work correctly. And by the way, yes, he's the one who said that D-Wave leaning up against one is like being next to the altar of an alien god. And I thought he was the CEO, but apparently he's not. This guy, Vern, is. Anyway.
Because the enemy of quantum computing is the environment, things like temperature. When you have temperature, you have molecules moving around that cause interference to the quantum computation. You also have electromagnetic interference from radio sources and gamma rays and all sorts of things. So you need to create a very quiet, clean, cold environment for these chips. Ultimately, what we're building is a quantum computer on a chip that's about the size of your fingernail. So these machines run at a very low temperature so that they can have that pristine, very clean, quiet environment to run in, and it doesn't disturb that quantum computation. Very, very cold, very, very rarefied environment because we're also running in effectively a magnetic vacuum.
That's a very interesting choice of words there, a magnetic vacuum. Same principle behind how they get particle accelerators to work. Interesting. He also mentioned gamma rays earlier, which is one of the things that they are searching to find dark matter. But take a look at how happy and giddy he looks when he starts talking about aliens at random in just a second.
You could consider these environments, these rigs that we built, these systems that we built to be probably the most rarefied environments in the universe, unless there's other intelligent life in the universe that has, purer, colder environments.
Say what? What you talking about, Willis?
For instance, outer space is 150 times warmer than the environment that we built for these quantum computations.
That makes me kind of wonder if dark matter is really like entities that need really cold environments to survive. Just crazy thoughts.
So you may ask, why do we go through all this trouble? The answer is, the promise of quantum computing is exponential speed-ups over classical computing.
Wow, he said that really fast and eloquently.
Things like developing drugs for cancer, or better modeling the molecular interactions of cancer and how it attacks cells and things like that.
Okay, but when he lies, he doesn't talk eloquently.
Big data.
As a civilization, we generate vast amounts of data. It could be climate data, genomic data.
Oh, wait. Genomic data? Why is Geordie Rose from D-Wave mentioning genomic data? That's uncool. Don't be messing with the genome, please, D-Wave.
It forces us to consider, more sophisticated notions of how the reality around us is actually shaped.
I can't ask it how long I'll live or the meaning of life. Really, we don't know what the best questions are to ask that computer. That's exactly what we're trying to understand now.
Okay, so let me just get this straight. We built this computer because we were gonna cure cancer and we need to implement these quantum level dynamics into our macro physical world, but we don't know really what its capabilities are. And Microsoft started building it without even knowing that the anion exists. The whole thing just seems backwards engineered to me. It's definitely fishy. Not to mention that D-Wave released their code so they could have everyone practice for free, open source, and that indicates to me that they don't really know how to use their own software, write their own code. It says quantum computing is real, but it's also hard. So hard that only a few developers, usually trained in quantum physics, advanced mathematics, or likely both, are likely to be able to do it. So they're fishing for people to write code for the software that they don't even have the imagination to do themselves.
These are from our lab in Burnaby in British Columbia. From the outside, they look like giant black monoliths, big metal boxes. So if you have the opportunity to stand next to one of these machines, it is an awe-inspiring thing, at least for me. It feels like an altar to an alien god. It feels like an altar to an alien god.
I think here's, in my mind, like the strongest argument for us being in a simulation, probably being in a simulation, I think is the following. That 40 years ago, we had Pong, like 2 rectangles and a dot. That was what games were. Now, 40 years later, we have photorealistic 3D simulations with millions of people playing simultaneously, and it's getting better every year. And soon we'll have virtual reality, augmented reality. If you assume any rate of improvement at all then the games will become indistinguishable from reality. They'll be indistinguishable.
Computing would be able to simultaneously consider every possible combination of solutions to a problem simultaneously. And the kinds of things that humans do seem to be explained by more classical computing, but this remains both a technical and controversial area. So they become, more knowledgeable, more creative, more beautiful, all the things that have been attributed to God in our religious traditions without limit. And an evolutionary process actually never reaches infinite levels, but it explodes exponentially, and so it seems to be becoming infinite. Literally stays finite, but it explodes in capability, moving closer to that ideal of infinite knowledge, infinite intelligence. So you could say that evolution is a spiritual process, and I believe that's the case. I mean, you asked before what is the purpose of all this, and I really see it as a spiritual process to expand knowledge. Well, we're going to be able to recreate the powers of human intelligence, all of the subtlety and suppleness of human intelligence in a machine. And therefore those machines, if human beings in fact are spiritual machines, and those machines that emulate human intelligence and have the same complexity and are based on the design of human intelligence will share in that property. And then you ask the question, okay, well, is a machine like that conscious? Well, how can you tell? Well, let's ask the machine. Are you conscious? So the machine says, yeah, I'm conscious. Well, a machine could say that today. Do you believe it? Well, today you don't believe it. When a character in a video game says, I'm very jealous or I'm very angry at you, you don't really take it seriously because we can see the edges of its intelligence. They're not fully convincing. They don't have all the subtle cues that go along with that emotion. So we don't really believe that they're really conscious. We think they're just a software program. But the point of my thesis is that as we get out to the late 2020s, early 2030s, these machines will be so complex and so rich in their emotional reactions and so realistic in their recreations of human intelligence that when they talk about their feelings, they will have all the subtle cues, and we will be.
For more details on this, see our blog in the description. Just like Google and Facebook and Twitter, D-Wave was created and funded by Intel, the Char's funding branch. This machine, once upgraded enough to be used properly, which will happen in a few years, will bring about the reality of Minority Report. D-Wave's most useful purpose is to dissect data and index it to file U. By doing this, the governments can easily install pre-crime, just as China has already been doing in reality for years. Computers predicting humans' actions before they happen based on their past and present data. So now maybe you'll start to think before you post. What goes on the internet does not come off, even if you hit delete. Coming up in 2018, Google will turn over its search engine algorithm to a massive network of self-learning machines. Soon thereafter, a voice interface will be added to Google, achieving the Star Trek computer goal that Google first outlined in the 1990s. Google's Ray Kurzweil has stated 2,000 and 8,000 qubit systems coming in 2 years and 4 years that will speed up solving nearly all machine learning optimization problems in 1 second after they are formulated properly for the wave system. In a few years, Kurzweil will have the classical computer power of Google EOS data centers and quantum computer power that could be beyond the power of all classical computers to drive his solution of greater than human intelligence. Artificial intelligence. Earlier this year, Lockheed Martin shared details of its implementation of a D-Wave Systems quantum computer, which reportedly cost $10 million. They are using the computer to develop new aircraft, radar and space systems. Google is taking steps at incorporating quantum computing into its operations with the Quantum Artificial Intelligence Lab, located at the NASA Ames Research Center in Moffett Field, California. Google has already assembled machine learning algorithms that involve quantum elements. Google had already used machine learning to recognize faces and other things in photos and videos by 2009. Quantum computing takes us all to the next level of artificial intelligence as it bridges the gap of human and machine interaction. Now machines are self-learning. We do not have to teach them. We no longer have to enter code and give the computer the answer so it knows what to do next time. Now it learns and writes its own code. Machine learning has already given us self-driving cars, speech recognition, effective web searches, and more. Google's algorithm recognizes that you searched for something a couple of seconds after searching something else. Google records and saves this information for others who make a similar typing mistake. Logging and saving your data is how Google learns to correct it for you. No one thinks about it. To us, this is now as normal as breathing. What will we have adapted to, gotten numb to, accepted as normal, in 5 years, in 10 years? Wearables have also impacted how we interact and use artificial intelligence. Now our hearts are monitored from our watches and cancer cells can be detected by our contact lenses. When we cannot sleep, frequencies can be sent out from these devices to make us sleep. If we are stressed, just hit the button on your watch and the frequency will reprogram you. Now machines are already able to control our minds literally, and like everything with computers, it leaves a detailed data log of you. How much more of yourself will you give away? Are you happy throwing away your soul, not to mention your worth in life? AnonDK Chapel says, the way I think of it is, AI is the science and machine learning is the algorithms that make the machines smarter. AI has become so pervasive in our lives we don't come to recognize that it is powering a lot of things. You probably use it dozens of times a day without knowing it. There are 3 types of learning. Reinforcement learning. This concentrates on how an AI agent should behave in order to get the most out of its work. The machine picks an action or a sequence of actions, and gets a reward. This is used when teaching machines to play and win games but needs a large number of trials to learn even simple tasks. Supervised learning. This is when researchers tell the machine what the correct answer is for a particular input. For example, they show it an image of a car and tell it the correct answer is car. It is the most common technique for training neural networks and other machine learning architectures. Unsupervised learning, also called predictive learning, made possible with quantum computing. Humans and animals learn in an unsupervised manner by watching how the world works and by observing. We have to teach ourselves basic concepts such as, objects that are not supported fall.
These are perfect weapons for example, assassination. You can program in what your nemesis looks like, have a thing fly for 2 hours, identify the person, kill him, and then self-destruct so no one knows who did it. It's great for ethnic cleansing. You can program these things to look for a certain ethnic group only and kill them. They're very, very cheap. You can imagine swarms of little bumblebee-sized things which just recognize the face, find the eyeball, which is the softest part of the skull, fires a little bullet there, which is very cheap and you don't need a lot of power, kills people. If you have thousands of those, you know, it would completely transform warfare in a way that's very hard for nations to defend against, other than by creating a police state. And for example, today, when drones are used to kill people, it's always a human who makes the decision, who's remote controlling the drone from somewhere, right? But within years, we'll have the technology that we can completely eliminate the human from this. Just have the drone fly around for a few hours, find somebody, use its own AI software, just like that elephant recognizing things, saying, oh, this is the person who looks like it's our enemy, and then have it killed with no human in the loop. A big risk with these things is that if once any superpower goes ahead and mass produces this thing, of course all other superpowers are going to want to do so too, and we'll have an arms race in our hands. But this arms race these researchers feel, will be very, very different from the nuclear arms race. Because whereas it's very expensive to build nuclear weapons and very hard to get hold of the materials, these weapons will be incredibly cheap. You don't need any hard to obtain materials. A quadcopter costs a few $100 on Amazon.com today. Software costs nothing once it's developed. And you can have the potential that someone with an axe to grind for under $1,000.
We have scientists and technologists and leaders who have actually now developed a number of new computing platforms like artificial intelligence that make this type of computing a reality. Platforms which now have led us from the unimaginable to the imaginable. It's an exciting time, and these new computing platforms will continue to drive productivity as they have over the last 50 years through enterprise software and computing platforms into the ecosystems and economies where they are embraced. And by the very nature, they will cause disruption in the existing systems. And our challenge as participants in the World Economic Forum in 2017 and beyond is to let our mission of assembling these global leaders to guide and help us develop and implement elegant solutions to these highly complex problems that are posed by implementing these newly productive tools. Under her leadership, she has now taken on one of the most remarkable corporate transformations that I've ever witnessed, and many of us have ever witnessed. And her leadership is now putting AI in the central part of the next chapter that her and her colleagues are writing. And in particular, the focus on cognitive computing, narrow AI, which augments human thought rather than replicating it. And how does that impact the markets that we work in, the jobs that they affect, and the people on this planet? So we're interested to hear a lot of her thoughts on this. Just to give you a sense of size and scale, IBM's Watson will touch approximately 1 billion people this year through its business solutions and access across various industries.
The big areas we've also invested in. So we've only picked a few areas because this is an open platform and there are millions of companies developing their own things. But where we've done and taken the development on healthcare in Watson is what we call our artificial intelligence. I should have said that. 300 million records, but every institution has its own data to bring to this. And therefore in this world, the second thing is important is you want to have industry data, and really to unlock the value, it's your decades of data as well combined with this. And so these systems will be most effective when they're trained with domain knowledge and in an industry context. And
the kill decision, which is required by United States law to be made by human beings. Human beings must be in the loop before someone is killed by a drone, but it's in the machine. And it doesn't need people. It can decide by itself whether or not it kills somebody. And the experts say it's going to make less mistakes and less collateral damage than the human decisions. The kill decision in robots in the air, in robots on the ground, in robots in the water or underwater, where there are also drones, is made by, or can be made by machines. And in my book, I quote many official United States government documents which say, our goal is to have the kill decision made by them. The problem is, artificial intelligence, sometimes they make mistakes. This is Talon, he's an automatic cannon. I mean, they can, a lot of ammunition in that thing, and you can also put rockets on it. It's in Iraq since 2007. At a demonstration with US generals, experts, the damn thing got out of control and started pointing at the audience. And there was a Marine there, thank goodness, running across the field who tackled it like a football player and threw it on its side and probably prevented a couple hundred people from being killed. Now, this wasn't reason enough to take a lucrative contract away from the company that built it, and it wasn't enough to take the Talon out of Iraq. It's just sort of off duty for a moment because there was some just a little bit to the Internet of Things, to artificial intelligence as being spread out. It's not a central machine in a box where you can pull the plug. Artificial intelligence is networked like the Internet of Things. And part of it may be in a smart watch or a refrigerator or in a supercomputer. And the intelligence exists only by networking it together. If the supercomputer needs more computer power, it goes there and gets it out of the internet. If the computer needs better programs, it goes there and gets those programs. And if it needs more information, more data, it goes there and gets more data. It sets up a spontaneous network for its needs, which collapses when it no longer needs it. It does this without us. And you have to imagine, like, there are these intelligence nodes all over the place. And they're like drops of mercury on a glass table. They will find their way to each other. They will find their way together. Now, we have to be very careful, because survival is an issue for artificial intelligence. It needs to exist to be able to do the things it wants to do according to its program. So it lays, like insect eggs, backups and computer programs all over the world, thousands and thousands of them, so that if we do destroy part of it, it's still alive.
D-Wave lands $30 million to build new quantum computer. The latest financing will help the company build a machine with double the number of qubits. Now, the money is coming from Canada's Public Sector Pension Investment Board. Here's the website of that company, PSP Investments. There's a 2016 annual report here, and if you go into that document, you clearly see that they have some plans that seem eerily similar to the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda by the UN, the morphed Agenda 21, where basically there is a full-scale lockdown control of every sector and segment of society. And if you look at this company, the places where they invest and where they're putting the money or letting the money flow through, well, you have public markets, real estate, private equity, infrastructure, natural resources, private debt, and they have Vision 2021, where it says, our vision is to be a leading global institutional investor that reliably delivers on its risk-return objective by driving a total fund perspective, striving to be an agile and sought-after enabler of complex global investments, and always acting in the best interests of its Canadian contributors and beneficiaries. So there you have it, a global-scale investment company putting $30 million into a D-Wave computer that will produce double the amount of qubits. And obviously they're trying to, I think, tie into the whole demonic system here that's being set up. The electrical grid, smart grid, everything that's part of the electric grid is there for a reason. And I think certain electrical patterns and symbols are used to manifest demonic entities and spirits. And that's what alchemy and all that stuff is all about. But we're going to see more and more of this pushed out. And the whole thing completely undermines our basic levels of human dignity and sacredness.
Yeah, go ahead and talk about the companies that now have the 2000 Q besides temporal defense systems.
Yeah, because that's kind of something we missed, and I certainly didn't comprehend that when we heard that Temporal Defense Systems, this encryption company, cybersecurity company, had bought the new model, the 2000Q, which is a 2048. I didn't appreciate the fact that everyone who had the other model, the older model now, was it the 2000X, Tony?
The 1000.
1000? Well, what the companies actually chose to do was swap out their chips. They basically had an upgrade. And the companies that chose to do that, I mean, some of them include Google, NASA, USRA, and even Lockheed Martin, to name but a few. Now you've got this other company, Temporal Defense Systems. They've got one. And the thing that also struck me today in this presentation was the fact that the amount of unknown companies, and we've got universities as well, that are accessing the quantum cloud. They can actually use the quantum processing power of D-Wave via remote locations. It's amazing stuff, and it really does beg the question, Tony, as to, well, we know where they're going. We'll be going with that after the break, but it just shows you it's really out there in the real world now. We've got Virginia Tech. They're using it there in association with DARPA, no less, and other US intelligence agencies. So here we have a direct connection between D-Wave and the spooks, and Of course, Eric Wadzinski, the brain behind it, he came from a DARPA-funded project in the first place. It's got money, the money's coming out their ears, and I think you'll probably have details there of this latest round of funding that they've secured.
Yeah, they just acquired or were provided an initial $30 million with another $20 million coming if they meet certain criteria, certain benchmarks. But overall, $50 million from a pension fund in Canada that is investing in this Canadian company. This is Burnaby, British Columbia, D-Wave's headquarters. And so the largest pension fund administrator or investment group in Canada is investing in their own people in D-Wave to the tune of $50 million. They'll be building a new facility, and that facility is going to house the new computer manufacturing equipment that I'm going to present to you today after this first break. The issue here is that D-Wave up to this point has been processing information in a classical fashion using non-classical devices known as qubits, quantum bits. And it's kind of like you're working apples and oranges against each other. And they've been trying to solve problems utilizing combinatorial optimization through a process known as quantum.
I know how you can get what they call the ghost in the machine. I had a company in Austin called US Creative, and we were one of the very first companies that was a B2B website. And we had a database of 450,000 professionals. When we started writing our code, the odd thing was, I can remember sitting in one of the meetings, I had a problem with my IT manager, and I said, what's wrong with the system? He said, Wayne, he said, I got to tell you, the damnedest thing's going on here. He said, there's extra code in here that we didn't put in there. Well, that put the seeds, Rex, today where we're talking this conversation, the ghost in the machine. I think our DNA has that effect. Yes. I think that, my question, Rex, in this, is it freedom or is it prison? I will not put those devices on because in the video post-production industry, we know what subliminal program. We did it. We had one of the largest beer manufacturers, and I can tell you the technology was back then. It was the great thing that we found out about television, the fact that the sensory of your eyes picks up more information than what your brain is actually recording. Have you ever studied hypnosis? How it works?
Oh, yeah.
Well, okay, so the brain, each human being is its own bioelectromagnetic field. It's a unique thing about us. That's why we have a soul. And it's that electromagnetic field that we can measure between 8 and 12 megahertz. Think about it. Today, you can go virtually no place on the planet, even now at 30,000 feet, where you're not getting Wi-Fi. My question is, what is Wi-Fi? And how is the effect on the brain? And how would we know if we were hypnotized or we weren't hypnotized? I've seen people who go through extreme anxiety. I have stories of children at the age of 11 killing caretakers, parental units, because they took away their electronic device. Is there a connection? Is there a correlation? I think there is. And now babies, as I was talking to you just a minute ago, born in 2017, they are basically immersed in Wi-Fi. So this gets very compounded and complex now. We know that our bodies, we can't get away from Wi-Fi. It turns out now we can't find a place to drink water, particularly in populated countries that are not heavily contaminated with pharmaceuticals. And even the food now is being genetically modified. Well, it all goes back down to the DNA. And we were just talking about these frequencies, ultrasounds. What I found out is that frequencies can actually kill certain parts, certain organs. They got the weaponry now that they can give you a heart attack. And you can be a perfectly fine specimen, as they would say. And it's by frequency. So if frequency can have an impact on DNA. If DNA has an impact on our species, and it goes right down the line, who the hell is controlling all the switches?
Unlike anything I've seen in the last 30 years, it offers the potential to be very disruptive, liberating us, if you will, from the world of the reactive that most of us in security have lived in for the last 30 years, into the world of the proactively predictive, by leveraging artificial intelligence and machine learning in doing battle against the viruses that have so long plagued our world. Instead of the low rates of performance that we've been used to seeing, they're now delivering and convicting at a rate of 99.7%, which is liberating all sorts of resources that heretofore were committed and tied to the downstream implication.
But he included CERN in this, in the discussion of D-Wave's computer. The reason is this computer will be responsible for opening the large scale, what I call the freeway portal at CERN, and maintaining the expansion and growth of that, and then the stabilization of a macro scale portal. CERN's own people have openly said, we are going to open a portal. We're going to open a gateway, a doorway. So this isn't me talking science fiction. I'm reporting to you from the source. But I think we're going to demonstrate just how real this is today. This is what the inside of this computer looks like. That's a black cube. You guys heard me talk about it on Friday, the worship of the black cube in Saturn, the black sun, okay? They chose the color and shape for a reason. This is electromagnetic shielding. It's also thermal shielding. This is a computer that is super cold, colder than outer space, for superconducting purposes. The chip has what are known as Josephson junctions to establish quantum entanglement at the quantum level. That's what Einstein called spooky action at a distance, quantum entanglement. That's what makes it work. But they have to have the chip and the conductors cold enough that they can eliminate resistance so that the electrons can flow freely in the qubit, and also maintain that quantum state and the quantum entanglement that allows it to communicate through what's called quantum tunneling. Gothard Tunnel, quantum tunneling. Gothard Tunnel, right near CERN, okay? They're showing you how they're opening the portal in the ceremony at the Gothard Tunnel. They show you the portal on the screen. It's a tunnel, and you use quantum tunneling to talk to the other side. So they're telling us straight out. So, super cold, shielded from electromagnetic interference from the outside. That maintains the quantum entanglement, and it maintains the superconducting state. This is what it looks like. Do you remember the movie, or I guess it was a movie, Star Trek movie, and the woman and her spine that was lowered, head and spine, down into the body? Now I'm going to share something with you today that I didn't on Friday. This is the qubit itself in an armature. That's what it looks like. You saw it in the video. What you're seeing here is not the real computer. This is for public consumption. When they had the Model 512, they were not at the proper frequency and wavelength, so they had to progress the model numbers. So here's what they did. They kept building more complex computers, added the qubits mathematically in a binary fashion towards that goal to get it tuned. The 4096 tuned into the universe. That's where they were actually able to communicate real time, 24/7,
stable portal at the quantum level. Same thing they're going to do at CERN, but on a macro scale. 8192 is the encrypted code. It's an algorithm. 2048, model number, one of the computers, refers to Peter Shor's algorithm called 2048. There's a thing in cryptology of secret encoding for communications called RSA cryptology. It's based on Peter Shor's 2048 algorithm. One of the benchmarks for D-Wave in building their computers was, can we find all the prime factors in this algorithm? Because Shor said, when he developed it in the early 80s, this theory, that it would take a quantum computer. Now, all he knew about were transistors. He'd never heard of qubits, as far as I can tell. But he said it would take a quantum computer to crunch the numbers, to break the algorithm, to break the RSA coding. Well, D-Wave did. They achieved their benchmark, okay? They didn't need the 2048 to do it. They did it with the 124 model, one of the Model Ts. And that's when the NSA and everybody got real cozy with them. Because D-Wave started with DARPA funding of $10 million. They realized they were going the wrong direction, so they went and got some venture capital. And they put together first one team, that didn't work, and then they brought together another team. That's the short thumbnail sketch of D-Wave. But they originated with DARPA. They've always been in bed with DARPA and the NSA. They sell their computers to Lockheed and USC. They have an open, public quantum computing lab at USC in partnership with Lockheed. Lockheed then bought a Model 12, or 512. NASA, Google, Amazon, the NSA's computing centers, data collection centers, like in Utah and Texas, all use D-Wave's computers. But they never talk about networking them. They present it to the public as though they operate independently with independent organizations. So how independent is Google? Okay? That's why this really stunned me, to realize all of these organizations, these corporations have these computers and they're all working together. So if you follow the money, not just the venture capital that I mentioned, but if you look at the investment publications targeting Silicon Valley and where the money is going, quantum computing, artificial intelligence from the quantum computing, that's number one. Number two is defeating death, immortality, genetic modification. It's all over in the public domain literature. That's where all the money's going. Jeff Bezos, Amazon. Why is he partnered with Google and D-Wave? He's one of the founding partners of D-Wave. Their model, their business model at Amazon is they want to sell you everything in the world. Now, this computer system also operates in an environment that's called the Sentient World Simulation, SWS. Purdue University published a draft white paper in 2006 describing a sentient world simulation, a mirror, a virtual reality of the entire planet and all its inhabitants. 2007, it went live. If I had my graphics up, I'd show you the progression of the model numbers of the computers coincide with the implementation of the virtual world. D-Wave's computer runs the mirror of the entire planet. The Model 512 in 2013, Gordy Rose described as having the equivalent processing power of 7 billion human brains, and each human brain processes a petaflop of data. We can't even imagine the Model T capability. Now we're up to 8192. So all these things connect. Real-time they can monitor us, know what we're doing, and predict, like future crime, predict what we will do. Because in machine learning, you have algorithms that are built based upon human behavior, modeling human behavior for the purpose of predicting what we will do. The machine predicts. If you can predict, you can control.
Why so much unspoken about this technology? Why are the people who work on this, the scientists, the physicists, unable to understand what they are doing? Why are they unable to explain the processes and functions? They have already lost their grip. If they told us the truth, no one would believe them. They are alchemists and magicians, deception artists. To quote one of them, quantum computation will be the first technology that allows useful tasks to be performed in collaboration between parallel universes. This is the end goal and the potential is here. This is why we must be vigilant. We must watch these new technologies and understand what the end objective is so we can stop it. Knowing the elite, we understand the end potential is the goal they seek and will do everything to bring it about. We will discuss this more in future videos on technology. We must pay attention so we are not deceived by the mainstream advertising. Quantum computing will bring back the days of Noah. Expect it.